I've got some exciting things to be able to tell you. We just went live with our website for the Front Row Dad live event happening December 2nd through the 4th here in Austin, Texas, right in my backyard. I am thrilled to bring this event to life. We've been talking about it for years. We've had these retreats where there are usually 40 to 50 people and we sell out every time. We've been doing this since 2016. Every event has sold out. And we have so many people who want to attend a live event, but we've never been structured to support that until now. And our website just went live. We had 3 people immediately secure their tickets. And guys, it's December 2nd through the 4th in Austin, Texas. You can see all the details at frontrowdads.com/live, or you can just go to frontrowdads.com and you'll see the information right there on the homepage of the website. But at this event, we are taking a deep dive into the 6 pillars that we focus on here at Front Row Dads. So of course, intentional parenting, thriving marriage, and we're also covering subjects like business evolution. How do you scale your business so that you own your business, but your business doesn't own you? Wealth and legacy. How do you get your money working for you so you have more time for your families? And how do you handle wealth within your family? Talking about vibrant health and emotional intelligence and so much more. We've got speakers like Hal Elrod, who is the author of The Miracle Morning. We have Justin Donald, author of The Lifestyle Investor. We have Preston Smiles, and Preston here lives locally in Austin. He is an amazing human if you don't know who Preston is yet. But one of the most impressive things is he has 4 children under the age of 5 years old. You're going to hear how he's doing all this. He lives an incredible life. He's got a beautiful relationship with his wife. These kids are incredible, and he's got this thriving business. How does he do it all? We have so many other people that are going to be there. I want to save some of the surprises, but you can go check it all out now and reserve your seat while you can at frontrowdads.com/live. Now, this is 6 months out, but I'm telling you, within hours of going live with the site, we sold 3 tickets immediately, and we only have 150 spots. So if you know you're going, go get your spot right now, frontrowdads.com/live. Now, if you're looking for more immediate support, we have coming up on July 21st, our live summit. Now, this is an online event. We do 6 of these a year, only 6 a year, and each one of them focuses on one of our pillars. And this one is about parenting. And guys, I'm not going to spoil all the surprises. I want you to go look at the webpage, frontrowdads.com/summit, and see who's going to be speaking there, because we have got 3 guest experts that are going to absolutely deliver incredible strategies for you to be the best dad possible. Now, whether you are a brand new dad or you have got grown kids, this event will be life-changing for you. We design these events so that regardless of what ages your kids are, again, are you in the infant toddler stage? Are you in the teenager? Or do you have grown kids? We have something for everybody at these events. So if you are a person who can resonate with being a family man with a business, not a businessman with a family, if you want to prioritize your family and crush it in all these other areas of life, if you are a high-performing, hard-charging, entrepreneurial type man who's a business owner, this event is the only one of its kind in the world for men like you. This is an online summit. You can get all the details at frontrowdads.com/summit. Or if you've got any questions about these events, you can reach out to our team, info@frontrowdads.com.
All right, Grant, we're back at it. Let's do this.
Giddy up, Buttercup. Let's go.
So first of all, everybody, Grant is an amazing friend. I just got done telling him pre-show that if all I did was say, tell me about your life, and then Grant talked for 40 minutes, this would be an amazing episode, because from my vantage point, from my seat, I am so deeply impressed with Grant, who he is as a man, how he shows up in one-to-one conversations in front of groups, and then with his team and his family. I wanted to get the story here of a guy who has built, in my opinion, a life that I would love to emulate pieces of in my world. So Grant, dude, we're about to get into the whole world of Mr. Baldwin. And I'm thrilled about this personally, but also because of the members that get to know you and then the rest of the world that gets to know you as well. So let's start with an easy one, man. How are you feeling right now? Like literally in this moment, as we record at 11:15 on June 21st. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. I appreciate the kind words. a good speaker dude, and we just resonated and kept in touch over the years, and it's been fun to watch each other's journeys, personally and professionally. So I'm a huge Roman fan. I'm a huge FRD fan, and so yeah, appreciate you letting me hang out with you. Yeah, life is really, really good. I know when we hung out at the most recent retreat, I told you that it was hard for me to come up with something that like, oh man, I'm really struggling here. This thing's like really kicking my butt. And again, it's not that life is perfect or it's kind of this false narrative that I'm telling myself, but I genuinely feel like, man, marriage is really great. Kids are really great. Business is really great. Health, I've made a lot of progress in. And so it's just like, life is really, really good. And again, I feel very, very, very grateful for where I'm at. But I think you also know that it's been very intentional. There's a lot of design that goes into having the freedom and flexibility and autonomy that we have in life.
And that's what I want to get into. I want to go through the story because I want people to be able to see your journey and then pick out the pieces they want to emulate. If there's something in there like, yes, that aligns with me, I want to put that into my world. So let's start with some context. Tell us who's at home. Tell us about your family.
Yeah, I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We have been together for 25 years, just celebrated our 20-year anniversary. We have 3 daughters, so it's me and a house full of women. It's the absolute best. I absolutely love it. My girls are 16, 13, and 11. And as much as I enjoy like being an entrepreneur, being a speaker, being a business owner, like, man, I love being a husband, love being dad. Like those are the roles that really resonate with me. And I know that's, a big part of why you and I resonate is I love business. I really, really genuinely enjoy it, but I don't want to do that at the detriment of my roles as a husband, as a dad. So yeah, that's the family. Those are my girls.
And how about on the business side? Tell us what you do. I mean, I could do my best, but
yeah,
it's evolving for you all the time too. So.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been in the speaking industry pretty much my entire career. And so pre that, I actually went to Bible college. I was a youth pastor for a little while at a local church. That gave me a lot of opportunities to speak. Speaking is one of those things I felt like I was good at. I wanted to do more of. I didn't know, like, how does this world work? Like, how do you find gigs and who hires speakers and what do you speak about? How much do you charge? And how does this mysterious black box of an industry work? And so at the time, this was, 16, 17 years ago, there weren't any books, there weren't any podcasts, there weren't any like good resources on how to get going. And so I found myself just emailing other speakers, stalking other speakers. Can I pick your brain? Just being annoying and just learning something and, kind of parlay that into gig after gig after gig. And so started off doing, a few gigs here or there, and then got to a point where I was doing 20, 30 gigs a year. And eventually got to a point where I was doing about 60 or 70 gigs a year and had a lot of people who were asking me like, hey, I want to be a speaker. How would I go about doing that? And so I started, this was probably 7, 8 years ago or so, did a course and did a podcast and did some coaching and just kind of like, let me just kind of help some people on the side, and quickly realized like, one, this is something I really, really enjoy and I felt like I was decent at. And 2, there's a really big need. Like I felt like we were helping people who were where I was when I got started. And so then it's like, well, what if we built a business around this? And so that's really evolved into what we do today. So I run the Speaker Lab, which is a coaching and training company for speakers, specifically on the business of speaking. Again, those key questions of how do you find gigs and what do you speak about? And that's where, you and I got connected years ago, is you and I were both speaking a ton and knew that there's a lot of people who want to do this. And what we always tell students is that it's simple, but it's not easy. It requires work. It requires effort. The fun, sexy part's being up on stage, but there's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes of just building the flywheel and building the business and building the momentum of it.
Yeah, I was just telling Tiger this story. For those who don't know, Tiger's my 12-year-old, and I was in the car talking to him about, so here's how it all started. On Father's Day, we pulled up to a traffic light and there was a homeless man, a man who was begging for money, and he had his son right there. And dude, I almost immediately started crying, and I said, hey man, I waved him over and I handed him a $100 bill. Wow. And the kids saw this. And that prompted a conversation. And I never do that, by the way. I don't hand out $100 bills like that. But in this moment on Father's Day, watching this man there with his son, I handed him a $100 bill and the kids were like, that's a lot of money. And I was like, it is a lot of money. And then they got into the question about having money. And I said, I want you guys to know that when you were born, Tiger, I was starving, trying to pay the bills, and didn't have $100 to my name. And I talked to him about the growth of the business and, starting out young. You and I in this business, working hard to get it going. I've told you this, I think, but we were at an event together you were sitting next to me at dinner, and I had learned that your business just did 7 figures. And I remember feeling like you and I were in the speaking business together. I was multiple 6 figures at that point. But to hear a buddy, a guy, say his business was about to do 7, I don't know if you know this, but you really opened up my mind to what was possible in building a business. And that's what I want to talk about today is opening up the minds of maybe some of our listeners to what's possible when you go from, the I work a lot to put food on the table to leveraging yourself, learning. And that's something you do really well, by the way. I want to give you a compliment here. I think you're great at asking for help, reaching out, looking for the resources boldly. And that's, in my viewpoint, that's been one of the things that's helped you. But let's talk about this. Give us, if you can, the big journey, and take your time to unpack this. But how did you go from the speaker, if we look big modular pieces of it, to where you are today? And then let's drill into some of the specifics of that.
Yeah, I can give you a couple of just milestones along the way. And I think one thing that you kind of touched on there that has been really, really pivotal for me, and something that I still really believe in today, is to look for someone who is where you are, or who is a step or two ahead of where you want to be, and being able to just kind of reverse engineer. And some of it is just like the practical thing of like, okay, what steps did you take? Let me kind of figure that out. But then some of it, like you said, some of it is just the mental part of like, oh, I could do that. I just had in my mind it was way more difficult. But now that I saw you do it, that again, not like in a negative or mean way, like, well, if that joker can do it, then this clown can do it. Like, no, like it just helps you to realize it's like that analogy and story that's told oftentimes about the 4-minute mile. Like once one person does it, well, then a bunch of other people think, oh, okay, well, now I understand that it's possible. And that was definitely the case for me. So for example, early on for me with speaking, because I had come from the church world primarily as a speaker, I did a lot of speaking on a weekly basis to students. And so I was comfortable speaking, but I was like, how does that translate to like a school assembly or to a conference? Like, how does that work? And there was a guy I had reached out to, Josh Ship, who's a successful youth speaker, reached out to him. He was doing an event a couple hours away from me. I drove up to meet up with him, had dinner with him, saw him speak. And it was just like, okay, now I get it. And it's just kind of like this aha, this click, like I could do that. Again, not in a cocky, arrogant way, but it just felt a level of confidence of like, okay, now I opened my mind to what was possible. And as a random side note, like that event where I saw him speak, like I was hired to speak at that a few years later. And so it was just kind of like this full circle moment. So that was a big deal for me. Another one early on was when I got to a point where I was doing about 60, 70 gigs a year. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. But as you well know, the nature of speaking is it is a high paying manual labor job in that you get paid really, really well to stand on stage and run your mouth, but you have to get on a plane, you have to leave your family, you have to go somewhere. And, sometimes like travel can be really, really fun. It can be really cool. You get to see, you and I have seen a lot of parts of the country that most people would never get a chance to see in their lifetime. But there's also like the downside of just the non-glamorous, non-sexy part of travel, in addition to just being away from home and being away from the family. So I quickly realized like, I don't have a business. Like I have a job. It's a cool job. It's a fun job, but it's nonetheless a job. And when you have a job, there is just a cap. There's a limit. And so I quickly realized like, in order to make more, I either have to do two things. Either I have to do more gigs, and I was already doing a lot of gigs. I wasn't trying to do more, or I had to, I think you ran into this as well. I had to like completely switch industries and kind of go to further upstream and go to more of a corporate type world. And that wasn't super intriguing, appealing to me. And so I remember feeling just kind of like stuck. And there are people that you and I know in the speaking world who they are speakers, they've been speakers, they will be speakers the rest of their lives. And there's nothing wrong with that. And so I remember I was doing a gig in Reno, and there's a speaker friend of mine. He's probably 20 years older than me, and he's a guy that I've always kind of looked up to as a mentor type figure. And so I met up with him, and I'm just telling him like I feel stuck. And there's a couple of things he said to me. He said, one is, you want to regularly find things where the challenge exceeds the skill set. Meaning like when you and I first got into speaking, the challenge exceeded the skill set. We felt way over our head. And there's that nervous there. There's that anxiety. But what happens is over time, you and I have done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gigs to the point that it flips and the skill set exceeds the challenge. Meaning you and I could stand in front of 1,000 people right now. We could give our keynote and we could crush it. And yet internally, we could be on autopilot. We could be bored. We could just be going through the motions because the skill set exceeds the challenge. And so he said, what you regularly have to do is you have to find things where the challenge exceeds the skill set. I'll give you a quick example. Like right now, at this moment, I don't remember if I told you this. I just started taking flying lessons.
And I saw a picture of that.
Yeah, I've always just kind of been intrigued by it. There's no like practical need to do it other than just like, that seems kind of cool. I've been on a lot of planes. Like, what's it like up front? And so literally just had my first lesson this past weekend, got a lesson tomorrow. And so right now, at this moment, the challenge way exceeds the skill set. When you are sitting there in the cockpit and you're just like, holy crap, this is intense, right? But what happens is over time, like the skill set exceeds the challenge. And that's where crashes happen as people get comfortable, right? And so at that moment in my career as a speaker, I just kind of felt like in that space, in that bubble, like especially like in the education market, I'd done a lot of the major events, I keynoted a lot of the large conferences. Like I just checked a lot of the boxes. And so it's kind of like, well, now what? So the other thing he said to me was, he said, Grant, I think there are people that are born to be speakers. He said, I think you're an entrepreneur who happens to be good at speaking. And that really stuck with me. And I was like, yeah, that really resonated because I love entrepreneurship. I was the teenager who was mowing yards throughout the neighborhood, who was doing anything to make a buck. I was selling random crap on eBay, just like constantly hustling, So when I was doing the speaking was fun, but again, it was a job. And so when he framed that for me as like, you don't have a business, you have a job. And I was like, okay. And there's again kind of this like light bulb aha moment. And so then it was kind of a matter of like looking for like, well, if I was going to have a business teaching this, like what would that look like? And so looking for other examples of people who are a step or two ahead, not light years ahead, but a step or two of like, okay, I can conceive of myself doing that. I can understand what that would look like and how that would play out. And so that's where I started when I was doing like some speaking and primarily some coaching around speaking. That's when I started to be really, really intentional about, okay, if we were going to do this and go all in on this and double down on this, like what would that look like and how would that play out? And what would I need to make that happen? And really beginning with the end in mind of being intentional about how we were going to go about doing it and how we were going to build it.
And so if we go to this day, talk to us about where does the Speaker Lab business, where does your business or businesses, where is it today? How, like, if you give me some context as to what are you doing, how many people on the team, what does your business look like 2022?
Yeah, good question. So we've got around 26, 27 team members. The majority of them are full-time employees. We're a completely virtual company. We have people all over the US. I'm in the Nashville area. We've got, I think, one or two other people here locally, but everybody's all over the place. And so we do a mix of group and one-on-one coaching and training programs for speakers. So people who just say, hey, I want to be a speaker. What do I do? And so there's a variety of things that we do in terms of helping speakers with their website, and demo videos, and helping them find leads, and a lot of just like the coaching and support that they need and the training of here's the steps you need to take and here's the process you need to follow to consistently find and book gigs. And again, it's that stuff that I wish I had when I got started, and maybe you were in a similar spot. And so that's the core of what we do today. One thing I've learned is that there's no shortage of people who are interested in speaking, and it's something that it's a very, very aspirational type of thing. And there's people who want to speak full time, and some people who'd want to do it on the side. So, and everything in between. And then when the pandemic happened, it created virtual opportunities that largely didn't previously exist. And so there's massive opportunities within the speaking industry today, just kind of to teach that. So yeah, so we've got, again, mid upper 20s in terms of head count. We'll do close to 8 figures this year in the business. And yeah, we've had pretty significant growth year over year.
Tell me about the early hires. Who were some of the early people you brought on? It's just you've got the idea. Did you hire an executive assistant? Did you hire an operations person? Did you first hire the coach? And I realize this is going to be different for everybody's business. So I'm really interested in your journey here of the first, like, let's call it 5 or 10 people. What did that look like?
Yeah, I think, let me kind of paint a picture of where we're today, just in terms of like leadership structure, and then we can kind of back into that. Perfect. And so today It's myself and 4 other directors, and we kind of make up the leadership team of the company. So I'm more like a CEO type of role. And then we have our director of sales, a director of marketing, a director of student success who does leads our like coaching team, and then a director of operations. And so underneath each of them, so those are my 4 direct reports, and that's it. And so I work with them on a daily basis of what do they need, and then they are leading their own teams. And so then to kind of like reverse engineer, figuring out, okay, how do we get to this point? So when we first started the business, it was largely a course. And so it was the typical model of creating a course, it was a quality, good course. And then it was sold primarily through webinars. And so one thing I was really intentional about early on is especially when it comes to webinars and courses, the 2 models are more of like an evergreen or more of a launch-based model. And I was definitely more interested in evergreen in the sense that I understood the launch model, but it just seemed like, man, you're putting so many eggs in that basket that if you're launching this offer and you're quote unquote opening cart, once or twice a year, and something goes wrong, like, boy, that is just incredible amount of pressure. I would rather have a couple of sales every day than have a whole ton of sales, twice a year. Like that just seemed like way too much pressure. So that was one thing, just being intentional of, I don't want massive ebbs and flows with cash flow. I want to be really just a consistent, steady moving train. Like that's what I want to do. We're also not trying to be some big tech company. We're not trying to IPO. We're not trying to take on outside investments or funding. I own 100% of the business. We don't have any plans of selling or taking on debt or venture funding or anything like that. So early on, because it was just primarily a course, then it's just a matter of like, okay, what are the levers that sell a course? What are the things that I can do? What are the things I need help? The big thing I needed help with early on was tech. And so hired someone who primarily owned like helping with emails and helping with the webinar software and helping with the shopping cart system and making sure that when someone purchased that then they got access to the course and that the course was set up. And so it was a lot of just like making sure all the tools play nicely together and making sure that they all cooperate. And when you push this domino, that all the other corresponding dominoes are lined up and fall into place. And so that was a big...
Real quick, I just want to clarify. So you've got some tech help, but are you writing all the copy, doing all the creative? You're making the business decisions. How does this look when it comes to sales and so on?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so especially early on, you're in the weeds, you're doing everything. And so eventually as you get people, then you're further and further out of the weeds and into the clouds, so to speak, and kind of looking at the big picture of the business. And so so early on, it was a lot of like the tech help. And then I think we hired like a part-time customer service, who could just help with the inbox. And so that was a big thing that they were helping with. A big thing to really think about is what kind of business do you want to build and what do you want your role in that to be? Okay. And so I'll give you some examples just off the top of my head here. I was really intentional on, I don't want to be the bottleneck and I don't want to be the face of the business. Okay. And so I tell the team regularly, even today, this is not the Grant show. I recognize that like I'm the mouthpiece in a lot of situations. I host the podcast. I have done webinars. My name is on the cover of the book, yada, yada, yada. But it's not the Grant show. And so when I talk about the company, I rarely, if ever, will talk about it in terms of mine, my, I. It's always we, us, our. We're all a part of this company and what it is that we're doing. And so I try to be really, really intentional with that and just making sure that the team knows like, we're not trying to I'm not trying to build a personal brand. Like that doesn't do anything for me. I'm completely comfortable going into a room and having nobody know who I am. I prefer that. And so that was one thing just really intentional about as we started hiring, like what do we need and what does my role need to be in this? And so we did the course thing for a couple of years and it went well and it would continue to grow. It's a very scalable way to go about doing things. And then we had a lot of people who were asking about coaching and like, hey, can you do coaching? Is that something you're interested in? And I personally wasn't really interested in coaching. I didn't, from the standpoint of one, I don't feel like I'm a great coach. And two, I just didn't want to be the bottleneck. I didn't want to be like, yeah, this whole business is built upon Grant coaching because that doesn't work. And so we started doing some group coaching, but it was more of like a higher ticket thing. That the course at the time was sold for $1,000 or less, and the group coaching was going to be sold for a couple $1,000s. And so I'd seen some people who were selling over the phone and more of a phone sales type model. Well, that's just a different model. It's a different skill set. And so I but found a guy who I think through some like referrals and relationships, he was doing a lot of coaching with sales teams. And so hired him just completely as a contractor on the side. Hey, can you just write some like scripts for us? If we were going to hire someone who could be on the phone and talk to someone else and get them to give, several $1,000s, like what do we even need? And so worked with him for a little while. And so he was helping with that. Then quickly realized like there's only so much coaching that I can do. So hiring like a part-time coach. And so you're kind of like, as the business is growing, like what are the bottlenecks? And then oftentimes it is people that you need to help solve that and to help eliminate and remove that.
On that note, by the way, with hiring, you just said that you hired that person through the relationships that you might have had, like it sourced from within. Yeah. Is that common for you? Like most of your hires been because of your network, or is it you're great at writing ads and putting them on LinkedIn? And
I'll give you a couple ways that we find team members today. One is through not just my network, but kind of team members' networks, but especially me, like it's definitely on my radar. So I'll give you an example that happened literally today. I'm hooked on, as you know, I'm hooked on pickleball right now. I play a lot of pickleball every week. And so I played for a couple hours this morning, 5:30 a.m., me and 3 other guys. And so one of the guys is a guy I played with several times. I didn't know him that well. And so we're talking a little bit, and he's like, here's what I do. And I'm kind of considering looking for something else. Well, it's been on my radar of this role that we're potentially hiring for in the next month or two. So I started a conversation with him. I was like, hey, here's this thing that we may or may not have in the next couple of months. He's like, I'm totally interested. So then I'm pinging our sales director this morning of just like, hey, talk to this guy playing pickleball. Here's a potential lead and option. He's like, absolutely, would love to talk to him, right? So some of it is just having it on your radar of what you're looking for and what it is that you need. And then there's times where maybe you stumble across someone playing pickleball, but then there's other times where I've reached out to you before of just like, hey, here's what we're looking for. Do you know of anyone I should talk to? And people oftentimes want to help, but they don't know where to help if you don't tell them. So being clear on what it is that you're looking for and what that role could look like. And it doesn't always have to be a full-time thing. Like we're at a point now where the majority of our team is full-time employees, but that hasn't always been the case. So for example, we didn't hire our first full-time employee until 2.5 years ago. And so we were doing like multiple 7 figures and we didn't have any employees. And like everybody was just a contractor. Like some of them were full-time contractors, some of them were part-time contractors, but it was just a mix of contractors. And then quickly realizing like, I guess we're supposed to have employees. Like, that was a world like I didn't know. So I think there's like the intentionality of like kind of working with what you've got and making it work. And then, the other thing I was going to say in terms of like sourcing was just our own audience. And so as our audience has grown, our email list, when we're looking for a role, like we'll put it out to the audience because that's for the most part people who already know, like, and trust us. They're familiar with us. Oh, I think it'd be really cool to work with the Speaker Lab. And I've been following you guys for a couple of years. And so we get a lot of leads from the audience. It also kind of depends on the nature of the role. So if we were looking for, let's say we're looking for a sales rep, then we might just start with our audience. But let's say we were looking for, recently we hired a paid media specialist and someone who's just going to own and run our Facebook ads and other paid media. That's more of like a specialized role. And so that's where like we're really going to tap more into networks or specialized job boards that may or may not necessarily, like those people may or may not exist within our ecosystem or audience. So I think just like having an awareness and talking with your own network has definitely made a big difference for us.
Yeah, that's huge. There's a lot more to unpack around the business itself. I mean, I realize that's hours, days, months, and ultimately has been years, right, of the process. What I don't want to miss here is also the piece of your family, which is why you resonate with being a family man with a business, not a businessman with a family. So let's also weave that in here to the conversation of go back to the beginning, if you will, and now walk us through the journey a little bit over the last, 10 years, let's say, or 15, of how present were you with your family along the way? And for context, I'm asking this somewhat selfishly too, because for me, when I was a new speaker, I was definitely like all in on speaking. I would say things to Tatiana like, we don't have any money. Like if I don't work 15 hours a day, like I can't cover the mortgage this month. And that was my world. Then I developed some success, but I had also developed some addictions to work.
Yeah.
Those habits that once was like, I need to put food on the table, were now just habits that allowed me to not deal with some of the stuff I didn't want to deal with as a dad. And I kind of hid at work for a little while until I didn't. And that's where Front Row Dads began for me. That was a little bit of my journey. How about for you, man? What was it like? How much time you were able to invest in your marriage and your kids? Because as I see it today, you do a really good job of spending time with your kids. Like, I love watching the trips that you're taking, and I love seeing the photos and hearing the stories of the Baldwin family and the adventures that you're on. So how do you keep family a priority? What did that look like?
Yeah, I think early on, you're right that when you're building a business, whether that's as a speaker or whatever it is that you're trying to do, like, I think that there's oftentimes you're going to be working a little bit harder than maybe you would like. And so one thing I always try to ask myself is this a season or is this the way it is? Is this a season or is this the way it is? Meaning that, when you are, let's say you're an accountant, tax time, it's just busy, right? But it's not always like that. If you're in retail, October, November, December, it's just busy, right? But then January, February, it slows down. And so understand, like, as a speaker, there are times where, like, it's just busy. You might have a 3-week stretch where you're like, I'm gone for 3 nights, I'm home for a night, I'm gone for 2 nights, I'm home for a night, I'm gone for 5 nights, I'm home for 2 nights. It's just like in, out, in, out, in, out. But then you might have like a 6-week stretch where you're just home and, your wife's like, do you have anything going on? Can you go somewhere, do something? And so it creates these big ebbs and flows, both in terms of like work, but also like you're talking about in cash flow. You'd have a month where you're just like, holy crap, I just made bank. Like I made my whole salary from my previous job. And then you might have a month you're like, I got nothing. And it's just like, historically for speakers, December is just dead. Like there's just nothing happening in December. And so if you can book any gig for any dollar amount, it's worth it. But it's just like, you just kind of like balance those ebbs and flows of the highs and lows. And so I think it was kind of the same when I started the Speaker Lab, because I'm speaking 70 gigs a year. And so I'm still doing that while creating a course and doing webinars and just trying to get this other thing off the ground. So you have like one plate spinning and you're trying to start the second plate, but you can't let go of the first plate while the second plate is getting going. And so for a little while, like there's always going to be that overlap when you're starting the new thing. When I was starting speaking and you have like none gigs and you're trying to get that first gig, like you have to have one plate spinning in order just to pay the bills and to be able to eat and live indoors. And so I think, like, again, there's going to be times where it's out of whack. And that's certainly been the case for me. But I think you just have to ask yourself, like, is this a season or is this the way it is? And so sometimes if I'm talking with some, entrepreneurs or something, and they're like, yeah, it's been a season, but like, I couldn't tell you when the season started and when the season's going to end. Well, at that point, like, you really have to reevaluate. If you just know, like, it's going to be busy for the next couple of weeks or couple of months, like it's a season, I can ride that out. But if like this is the way it is and there's no end in sight and there's nothing you're doing to change that doesn't work. And so I think that you absolutely have to have that intentionality there. And again, I don't know, man, it feels cliche to say of just like, you got to be intentional about it, but you do. Like, so there's things that are just like non-negotiables for me. Like, I don't want to work 50, 60, 70 hours a week. I don't want to have an office. Like, that's why we're a virtual company, because I want to be home. I take off a bunch of time during the year to go on trips. Like like we take a lot of trips. And it's not necessarily like anything like amazing or extravagant. Like, we love going to the beach. We love going to Disney. We love little adventures here or there. Like, we love trips and adventures. And so then the business is going to be built based on that, where Grant can travel. A couple times now we've done a sabbatical where I've taken an entire month offline, off of the business, and just like, we're going to build the business so that I can do that. And so, like, I think, again, just the intentionality of going, let's play this out. If we built the business this way and it got really, really big, is that the kind of life that you want? Or if you do this one thing and it leads to X, like, is that what you're going for? Is that what you're trying to accomplish? And if it's not, then get off of that path. And so there's several things that I know, like right now, that we do where we're leaving money on the table that we could be doing. That's just low hanging fruit. Like, I know I could charge a lot for one-on-one coaching. I just don't want to do one-on-one coaching. I just don't. I know we could charge a lot to do like masterminds and things that are like dependent on me. I just don't want to do that. Like, that's just not intriguing. That's not interesting to me, because I don't want to be the bottleneck. And so I think there's like massive amounts of intentionality of like, what kind of business do you want to have? I don't want to do coaching calls I don't want to do sales calls. And so that means if we're going to do those things, then someone's got to do that. And so finding those people who can, who can lead that or can own that part of the business.
What have you learned to say no to that was particularly difficult over the years?
I think a big challenge, even today, is just there's no shortage of opportunities. Like there's just no shortage of things that you could do. And I think it's so difficult for an entrepreneur to just not bounce from shiny object to shiny object because they're all good. Like they could all work. So I'll give you a quick example. I remember several years ago, I was really interested in real estate investing. I didn't know anything about it. I was just new to it, was wanting to dig into real estate investing. And so there's a friend of mine who'd done a ton of real estate investing. And I remember asking him, I said, okay, man, I'm interested in real estate investing. You have all these different types of real estate investing. You have single family home and multifamily home and short-term rentals and Airbnb and raw land and commercial properties and on the list goes. And I said, which one is best? And he said, yes. I was like, that's not helpful. I was like, what does that mean? He's like, they all work. What you don't find is someone doing all of them. And so like, that's really stuck with me because that's true with any entrepreneur, right? So right now with what we do within the Speaker Lab, there are opportunities like a lot of different ways that we could go about helping people. What if I did one-on-one coaching? What if we offered just one-on-one coaching with anybody? What if we did masterminds? What if we did live events? Live events would be great for speakers. Why don't you do a live event? We've never done a live event because I just don't want to. There's people who are interested in speaking are also interested in writing a book or doing courses or doing coaching or doing consulting or doing a podcast. You should teach that. It's like, oh yeah, we should teach that. But like the best thing that we can do is like we do one thing and we do that one thing really well. So we tell our speakers, you want to be the steakhouse and not the buffet. The steakhouse, not the buffet. Meaning, John, if you and I were looking for a good steak, like we could go to a buffet where steak is one of 100 things that they offer and they're all mediocre. Or you could go to a steakhouse where they do one thing, but they do that one thing well. They don't do seafood. They don't do tacos. They don't do pasta. They do steak. And so I'm really intentional for us as a business to just say, we're a steakhouse. And I love tacos, but we don't make tacos here. We make steak. And if you don't like steak, that's fine because there's plenty of other places that make pasta. There's a great pasta place down the street. And let me tell you about them and you need to go work with them. That's fine. That's not a problem at all. But I think just the intentionality just in terms of focus and just saying like, no, we do this. No, that's good. That's shiny. I love it. I'm intrigued. We do this. This is what we do. I think a big part of our success is just like we've been in the speaking industry doing one thing for an extended period of time. And so it's not like, oh, Grant, what's he up to now? Oh, I thought he was doing real estate. I thought he was doing manufacturing. I thought he was doing Amazon. It's like, no, he's been in the speaking business doing the same thing, offering the same dang product for an extended period of time.
Yeah. When you look at all the people that that are business owners and CEOs, do you think that's a common thread of like, it's not their ability to say yes and generate ideas, which many of them are good at that. There's visionaries who are endless ideas. I mean, I'm definitely in the camp of like overwhelming my team with good ideas. Do you think that the common thread though is their ability to pick a lane, stay in their lane? And of course, granted, this is all in context because sometimes you have to switch lanes, right? An industry that might be dying and you have to go with the changing times. But in general, do you think that's a thread that you see amongst all these CEOs and business owners is their ability to say, no, I don't want to do the mastermind, even though somebody's like, you could make so much money doing a mastermind. And you're like, yeah, but it doesn't fit these principles that we have, right? These values, these defined boundaries that we have, these defined, this is my zone of genius, or this is where I stay. I don't get involved in other things. These are the 4 people that report to me. I don't want to get involved with every team member on, is that it? Is that a common thread? Their ability to minimalize, simplify, focus?
Yeah, I think we have a very, very simple business. And like, we don't want to make it complicated. I don't want to offer 10 different products. I don't want to have a whole bunch of different SKUs. And again, there's no shortage of things that we could do, but just saying like, no, we do this. Like we are a steakhouse and that is it. And so some of it is me telling myself that. Some of it is telling our team that. Just reminding them like, yeah, those are all great ideas. And yeah, we could totally do those things. One other thing I think is really important in terms of like the growth of the business that's been a big thing is hiring really good people and letting them own parts of the business. Okay. And not from like an equity standpoint, but just like in terms of decision making. Okay. So I'll give a couple thoughts on this. Like I remember early on when we first started like hiring some people, just part-time contractors that my hesitation was, I don't want to hire people because I don't want to manage people. I didn't feel like I was great at it. Like, I like people, I like working with people, but I don't want to manage people. I didn't really know what that looked like even. And so it was just kind of a limiting belief. What I have found though, is that it's counterintuitive, but the more people we have, and having the right people, which is a huge, huge caveat there, the more people we've had, the easier things have got for me. Because there's just fewer things I own. There's fewer things I got to do. There are days where I'm just like, I'm not sure what I need to be doing today. Because it used to be like, I got to write an email. I got to prepare for this webinar. I got to work on the slides. I got to do this. I got this meeting. I got to run this meeting. And now, like, it's just, I was talking with a mutual friend of ours who just spent some time with Richard Branson. And I asked him, I was like, what was the big takeaway? And he said the big thing that Branson kept saying was hire great people and get out of the way. And I think there's just so much truth to that. So within our business, we have 3 core values, and one of them is ownership. And so it's just, when I come back to, this is not the Grant show. And so what would you do in this situation? And 99% of the time, we're going to go with that. There was this morning, I messaged our marketing director. I was like, hey, here's a cool funnel idea that I saw. And I was like, I think we could totally do this. And I was like, I'm just putting it on your radar. If you need anything, let me know. And it's not like, hey man, you need to do this, and I want you to have it done by the end of the week and drop everything else that you're doing and make it happen. It was, you're a very smart marketer. So here's something I thought could help you. If you want to do this, cool. If we never do this again, that's fine with me too. But I pay you really well, so I don't have to think about it. Because like you, I don't need you just to be a task person. Like, I don't want to be the one that goes up the mountaintop and like tries to figure out the latest and greatest marketing strategies, and then comes down and says, okay, I need you to just do A, B, and C. I want to say like, hey, here's the destination. Whatever you think is the best possible way for us to get there, let's do that. And so hiring really good people. And the other part I would say with that, with hiring great people, is to compensate them accordingly. And so the majority of our team has some form of variable comp that when the company does well, they do well. And so they're incentivized based on their role, what it is that they're doing, to do well because they make more. And so there's, again, when we talk about like a level of ownership, if I bust my butt, I don't want to feel like, oh, I made the same amount. And if we suck this month, I made the same amount. No, I want you to have the ability to make more because you help generate more for the company. And so I think that like having a comp plan that incentivizes that goes a long way as well.
Let's say there's a guy listening, and maybe he's the guy on the other end of the mic right now looking at you on the screen. And he's wondering, how do you develop the comp plan? You hear that idea, you're like, that's a great idea, man. I've got a couple of employees. I want to do a comp plan. And then the next question is, how the hell do I come up with a comp plan? Oh, that sounds like way too complicated. I've got 30 things I got to do today. Where do I even find the time to come up with a comp plan? And of course, it's like, well, give it to your COO. But yeah, I don't have a COO yet. What would you advise somebody in that space?
I'll give you an example. Yeah, I can tell you. So one of the things that we do with certain team members is we do a profit share. And so the profit share is based upon when we hit like certain revenue targets. We do this on a quarterly basis. When we hit revenue targets, then there's like a tiered system of how much profit they would make. Okay, so we're incentivizing basically both top line and bottom line, right? So let me give you some like actual numbers here, and I think that'll help. So if, let's say for round numbers, if we hit $100,000 in revenue in a quarter, then you get 1% of profit. If we hit 200,000 in revenue, you get 1.5% of profit, and on up to whatever it is that you're comfortable with. And you got to like do the math and like, okay, let's play this out and see how this does here. Because if you offer, too many pieces of the pie to too many people, all of a sudden you're like, oh, dang, the pie just got really small for me.
And did you outsource that? Did you hire a CFO or a bookkeeper to look at those numbers for you?
No. So I did those early versions and just kind of like ran some like rough back of the napkin math of just like, hey, let's do this. And so like in those cases, like again, they're incentivized by the profit, meaning like if we have a huge revenue, but we don't have any profit, there's no profit to share. And so whereas like if you're like, well, we're not going to spend anything and we're going to have huge profit percentage, but we didn't grow the bottom line, then like you're going to get a big percent, but it's a small number. And so they're incentivized to do both. And so that structure we've kept for several years with several of our key team members. I would also say, like, when it comes to comp plans, like, give yourself, and I think communicate this to team members too, like, flexibility to evolve and change. Like, this is what works today. We're going to reevaluate this in a year. What I always communicate is, I don't want you to take a step backwards, but I also want to make sure this is a win for both of us. And because there's times where it's gotten out of alignment. Like, man, you're making bank right now, and sometimes they're just like, yeah, this is like a good setup. And if they've done something that generates bank for them and it makes sense, like, yeah, then keep doing that. But if something just feels out of whack, I think that there's kind of like almost an internal gut check of like, does this feel weird? Like, there's times where you're paying someone and you're like, okay, here's what I'm paying, here's what I'm getting, and like, does this feel weird? And for one way or another, meaning like, it feels weird, like you feel like you're overpaying for what you're getting, or you're way underpaying for what you're getting. Like, does this feel weird? So give yourself some grace of like, it may, you may need to change that. The comp plan may work this year and it may not make sense next year.
Well, here's my question, Grant. We've got 3 minutes and I've got 13 questions.
We need to do part 2, man. Well, I honestly, like, I love this topic because entrepreneurship is fun, but it's no fun if you're dropping the ball as a husband or as a dad. Like, then you're doing it wrong. And so the business should support your life, not the other way around. And so I want to build it in a way where I can take a sabbatical, where I can take a lot of vacations, where I can play pickleball regularly, where I can spend a ton of time with the family. Like, and so you have to just begin with that end in mind of what it is that what you want life to look like. And then if there's a business activity or decision that is counter to what it is that you're trying to do, then you can't do it, or you have to figure out a different way to do it that makes more sense. And so you have to just be super, super intentional about those things. And again, man, it sounds so elementary, but like, that's a big reason, like, we've made so many of the decisions that we've made with the business.
Yeah. Well, dude, thank you for the chat. I had been looking forward to this, and very insightful for me, and I hope it helps many other guys. Some of my favorite little pieces that are maybe tiny statements, but I can already feel them having a big impact in my life. I love the question, is this a season or is it the way that it is? I love how you talked about just hiring A players and then giving them ownership and getting out of the way. I love the idea of profit sharing, whether there's lots of ways to look at profits and probably lots of ways to approach that, but involving them in the success of your team. These are things that are easy to say, easy to write down in notes, and then easy not to execute on. But I'm really taking a look at these as it relates to my business, and I imagine that other people will be doing the same thing. The challenge of really asking yourself, have you created a business or a job for yourself? I think is really good. Even the open cart, or like the all the pressure being on one moment versus like, where can you relieve pressure in your life? Because I feel like so much of my business, when I create a business that puts so much pressure on me, it's hard to then show back up to my family and be like ready to explode because I have so much pressure on me. So it's not even that I need better parenting strategies per se. I need to relieve some pressure at work to let my natural parenting abilities show up. So they're not drowned out by the intense emotions created during my work day. And just I think that what I also find is the principles that guide you. So much of this is knowing who you are, knowing what you want, knowing what you don't want, and then having the courage to live into that. It's been a great conversation, as it always is.
Can I give one other quick thing?
Anything you want, man. Yeah.
I think the other thing, as you hire people, and again, I think people are like the linchpin of what can really grow and build a business, but just take really good care of people. Like, actually just give a damn and like really like care about them. So I'll give you a quick example. I realized the other day, I shared this with the team. Again, we've got 20 something people on the team. We haven't had anyone leave in the past year. We've had 0 turnover in a full year. And I was telling the team, I was like, that's not normal. Like, that doesn't just happen. But like, we've been so intentional about our culture, especially for a virtual company, of like, you're not going to an office. You're not seeing these people on a daily basis. You're not rubbing shoulders with them. Your families aren't meeting. You're not, going out for drinks on Friday after work or whatever. Like, you have to be super intentional. So I think building a culture that if people are the most valuable asset and resource to a business, and finding good people is really hard, and keeping people is really hard, then I always tell the team, like, I want this to be the best place that you ever work. Because there's a good chance you're going to do other things in your career. I don't expect that everybody's going to be here forever. But while you're here, I want to make it really hard for you to leave. Not in a manipulative way, but just that like, dang, the grass isn't greener over there. Like the grass is green, like really lush and green here. Like, why would I leave? Like this is amazing. I have freedom. I have flexibility. I have autonomy. My team doesn't micromanage me. They don't babysit me. They give me a ton of flexibility. We have a guy who spent the past 6 months living out on an RV, and he and his family were traveling around. I was like, man, as long as you get your work done, I don't care where you are. As long as you have good internet, whatever you need to do to get your stuff done. And he's like, oh, like, and so for the past 6 months, they've been like bouncing around. He's like, this was completely game changing. And so just treating people like adults, like you do your work and you can have a ton of freedom and flexibility and autonomy. That's great with us. And we're not going to tell you how to do your work or where you do your work. Like you're an adult. We have a guy who's in Hawaii right now. And he got up yesterday at 4 a.m. local time to be on a call. And I was like, man, you're in Hawaii. That's awesome. But a guy who spent several months in Africa with his wife's family last year who are missionaries. He's like, can I go to Africa to work for a couple months? Like, yeah, man, if you can figure out the time zones and you can still show up for things I need you to be at, like, that doesn't bother me. He did great. He was awesome. But just like, again, the point being like, when you have good people, like just take really good care of them. And sometimes it's the big things like their comp plan. And sometimes it's just the little things of just like checking in with them. So one thing, like small thing I do is on a quarterly basis, I do a 15-minute one-on-one with everybody in the company. And there's no business agenda. Like I just did one with someone who joined the team a couple months ago. And he was kind of like, I'm meeting with the CEO and like, am I in trouble? I was like, no, man, I don't have anything business work related to discuss. I'm just like, I wanted to chat with you a little bit more and like, how's things going? Is there anything you need from me? How's your wife? I know you got married a couple months ago, and just like shooting the breeze and like just caring about people, like makes such a huge difference versus feeling like, how do I find the next cog and that plug into my wheel or into my system that can do something and make me more money? Like that's not going to work. And I've done that before. Like I've made the mistake, but like building a company culture that people really genuinely care about and know that they are cared about goes such a long way.
Grant, I love you, my friend. Thank you so much for this. Imagine many other great conversations in our future. I'll let you get back to your day right now, but yeah, part 2, 3, 5, 10, all to be had in the future, man. Thank you. Thanks for being a great example. Thanks for opening up and sharing with us a little bit about your journey. I learned a lot about you today, which is a big intention of this conversation. And I can't wait for other guys to learn about you too. So thanks, my friend. And real quick, in case there's somebody listening and they're like, I or somebody I know wants to get into the speaking business, is it thespeakerlab.com?
Yep. Thespeakerlab.com. Everything we do is over there. Got a podcast by the same name, the Speaker Lab Podcast, over 400 episodes. So plenty of resources and holler anytime I can help.
Guys, you could go listen to me talk about my speaking journey.
Yeah. We got a couple episodes with you there. Yeah. And they're a few years old at this point, but yeah, we can go back in the archives for those.
Forgot about that. All right. Grant, thanks, man.
Thanks, brother.
Gentlemen, thanks for listening to the show today. 2 actions to take from here. First, implement one thing that you learned from the interview. And number 2, share this episode with somebody who values being a family man with a business. If you're enjoying the Front Row Dad podcast, the biggest thanks we ever get are honest reviews. So thank you for your feedback in advance. We read all of them. And if you want to learn more about the Brotherhood, which is our private community of 200 men from 6 different countries, visit frontrowdads.com for more info. If you're wondering what the hell the Brotherhood is all about, I'll leave you with some real feedback from guys who are active members and why they are part of our crew. Thanks again for listening to the show, and I'll catch you on the next episode.
You have this passion for wanting to find a way to make you a better parent and a better husband, just better in general. And so you develop this community of like-minded men that aspire to be better and aspire to put family first and business second. And so to me, there's no greater place I'd rather be. You know, people ask me all the time, like, if I could only pick one group, mastermind, organization, whatever to be part of besides my own, it's always yours. And that's it. And by the way, part of that has to do with you and the leader you are and the way that you treat people and how you show up and the level of preparation that you have and the quality and amount of value that you offer. And then part of it's in the community that's been assembled and these unbelievable like-minded men that show up willing and ready to serve and to give and to share. And so to me, there's no better place that I can be spending my time. I look at two different things that we can be doing with our time. One of them is growing relationships and starting first with the most important relationships. And the other one is growing our financial acumen and our wealth to be able to do the things that we want to do and have impact and be able to spend time with the people that we value most by buying that time back. So to me, what you do and what I do is a great marriage of what I think is most important. And I would also throw in there that health is, the other component of that. And I feel like the community that you've built, that each of us have built, is also centered around that, because you talk about being a great husband, parent, that's going to come from taking care of yourself and making sure that you have the energy to be able to serve. And I do the same thing on a wealth standpoint, because wealth to me is not just about money. It's actually about having the time and the space to have your personal health. I would take having great health over no money any day of the week, rather than the inverse of that, having a lot of money but no health. So to me, those are like the three most important components. And to me, we're always merging those three in the things that we each do. And so I think that's why there's a lot of crossover of, members. That's why what you do resonates so much with me. What I do resonates so much with you. I joined as a lifetime member for that small little window where you offered it. I'm like, I'm in, because I know if I'm going to commit my time anywhere, this is it, because it makes me a better man, makes me a better husband, makes me a better father. It encourages me to really step up my peer group with other like-minded men so that I can be on mission, on point with other people that will hold me accountable at the highest level.
So John and I met a year and a half ago with the launch of my first book. And as we were going through the interview, I began to ask him questions about the brotherhood, and it resonated within me that a community of like-minded, like-hearted men that wanted to win, as he was just saying, at business and in life. And I'd reverse that. I want to win as a dad, and then I'd also love to be successful in business, because I feel like if I don't get the dad right, who cares what I did in business? That's my legacy. That's what lives beyond me. So to tribe up with a bunch of dudes going in the same direction with the pillars that are in place and the way that not only are you encouraged, compelled, you're chided, you're laughed with, but you get to pace yourself, but you can get around a band of dudes that you can trust, you can share with, you can grow with. And just recently completed a time with these guys. We did this fast at the start of the new year. Every day I would tune in to the little app where we were sharing comments, and I was so impressed how you could see guys that were further down the road and things like this, guys that were just starting, and the camaraderie, the encouragement. So for myself, this was a total fit, and I would encourage any dude that's looking for a place where you can feel connected with a band of guys wanting to go in the same direction. Front Row Dad's for you.